Good evening.
Good evening.
I'd like to call to order the Board of Education for Nash County. Madam Clerk, could you do a roll call for me, please? Is she around?
I'm right here.
Okay.
Just a second, Mr. Shaw.
Yes, ma'am.
I've got you. Franklin Lamb,
Here.
Dr. Washington,
Here.
Dr. Chavis. Here. Dean Edwards,
Here.
Chris Bissett,
Here.
Mr. Sharp,
Here.
Blank Dunton, Ricky Jenkins,
Here.
Zach Gray,
Here.
Evelyn Bullock, and Sharonda Thomas.
Thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Chairman Sharp. This time I would call the recess meeting of the Nash County Board of Commissioners from November the 7th back to order, and we have all commissioners present at the time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let me just say welcome to our county commissioners. It's great to be with you again for this joint session to talk about the state of our schools in our county and what's going on with that. It gives me great pleasure and honor to share with you the great things that Dr. Evans and staff is doing with inside Nash County Public Schools, as well as the support that you guys has generated up with us over this past year. We look forward to doing many more great things of that nature. At this particular point in time in the juncture, I'm going to ask Dr. Ellis if he would give us the updates, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So first, I want to welcome the commissioners to Nash Central High School. I think this is a pretty good place to talk about education. We're sitting in school, so thank you for being here tonight. Before I get into the logistics, I just want to thank the commissioners for their support. Sometimes you don't know what your money does, but tonight you're going to see what the local funding looks like, Nash County Public Schools, and we just want to thank you for being there for us and your dedication to our students. Tonight you're going to have a folder that's sitting, it's a yellow folder. It's going to contain the slideshow and some other documents concerning some questions that were given. I'll talk about those questions and the other documents later, but first we're going to get into the PowerPoint. The agenda tonight, as you're going to see, we're going to talk about current conditions. Departments will come up here and speak about current conditions and then moving forward and looking forward. We're going to have a conversation around JROTC. Mr. Sharp will be speaking to that. And then there is a question about demerger timeline, which he will also be discussing. So this time, Ms. Wallace.
Good evening. Good evening. So this evening, I will talk to you addressing some of the questions that you have regarding supplements, recruitment bonuses, and next steps for a local salary set scale for classified employees. So beginning with the supplements. This is where we are currently. In local supplement payout, we're at $4.7 million. And in the 21-22 school year, we were at $4.3 million. The state's additional supplement payout for this current year is approximately $1.3 million, and last year it was $2.3 million. So you can see the differences there in terms of the payout amounts for local and what the state will allocate this year as well. Local is paid on a monthly basis, but the state payout is on an annual basis for all of our support staff in terms of our teachers as well as our support curriculum staff members. For the next slide, This just gives you an average local teacher supplement amount, and it's a comparison for some of our surrounding districts. Some districts give you more details than others, and that's why you can see the breakdown on a few of them. For Wake County Public Schools, their supplement payout for teachers is 20.4% to 26.2%. For Johnston County Schools, their payout is 11.5% to 14.5%. And you can see that the payout amount is tiered based on the years of service that an employee has. For Nash County Public Schools, the teacher salary supplement payout is 11% to 12.5%, and it's based on your level of degree. And for Wilson County Schools, regardless of your years of service or the degree level that you have, is strictly at 8%. So for the recruitment bonus payout, in 21-22 school year, we paid approximately $288,000, and that amount was varied based on the positions held and the needs of the school. We do have recruitment efforts and needs, and they begin with our hard-to-fill positions. That's right. Yeah. We have elementary, EC, middle school EC math and science levels, high school EC math and science levels, instructional assistant ECs and regular TAs, pre-K teachers, and bus drivers. The requirements. This does apply to all full-time and part-time positions. However, it is prorated, the amount that they receive based on their terms of employment. And in order to receive the recruitment bonus, they must remain in the district for the entire school year. Additional recruitment efforts and needs. We do have a challenge when it comes to staffing, fully staffing our low performing schools at 100%. So we looked at the schools that are in the lowest 5%, and that's the performance basis, and that comes from the state, and it is tiered. And we do all that we can to provide quality staffing for those schools. They get an additional recruitment bonus if they were to go and teach in one of those schools. And we looked at schools that have numerous vacancies, and those are the schools that had more than 5 certified positions that were vacant, especially those in the testing areas. Recruitment payouts. Retention payout. That was approximately $800,000, and what we did in order to afford that amount, we received the CARES grant, which is the first ESSA grant that we received. They allowed us to use the remaining funding in that grant to take care of bonus efforts. So I go back to Mr. Outlaw. He always says, what do we do for the teachers that are here and doing everything that they can and remain with us? Every employee, classified and certified, that stayed with us during the year did receive a one-time payout of $750. Okay. These are some next steps and things to think about that will probably come up later, and you'll get additional information about this as well as we learn more. As an attempt of the state to level the playing field, in terms of salaries for classified employees, the state is recommending approval. Can't say that it will happen right away, but they are paying close attention to the inequitableness of the salaries for classified employees. So they want to make sure that we're meeting legislative requirements. They also want to make sure that we're providing flexibility for local education agencies to establish competitive local pay scales. They want to simplify and combine the pay ranges for levels within a position as classified. Expand the pay ranges to allow the local boards of education to establish pay scales that meets the needs for their specific employment markets. And they also want to align the State Board of Education salary policy to the Office of State of Human Resources pay ranges and job descriptions where possible to create greater efficiencies and comparability. That was updated July 1, 2022. So in summary, what this says is We are meeting the $15 minimum for all of our classified employees. But because of the pay scale, and we don't have a lot of flexibility in the pay scales, if I'm an employee that have worked in the district for 10 years, I get paid $15 an hour. If I just am hired in the district as a classified employee, I make $15 an hour. So it's not level the playing field for all of the employees that have been here for many years. And that's the way the state scale has been designed. We don't do steps. It is out there for you when it comes to my years of service when I'm hired, but once you're hired, you're locked in at that rate unless you're promoted or leave and return to the district. So many of our surrounding districts offer a local salary pay scale, which is a step scale for employees in classified roles so that they have a more competitive salary. Local funds may supplement the pay ranges, and LEAs may approve local schedules differentiating years of experience and education. This does align with the North Carolina OSHR salary ranges and provides rider ranges to create more flexibility. The last slide that I do have for you is our district has been able to repurpose funds to assist clerical classified staff. However, we have much work to do in creating a local salary step scale for other classified employees. We have outlined here for you a potential increase for bus drivers, bus monitors, and teacher assistants. These amounts at the bottom are not right. I don't know what happened with that slide, but I can tell you, if you have a pen, I'm going to give you the accurate amount of what it totals up to, and we will revise this and get you the corrected slide. So for a 1% increase for bus drivers per year, it would be approximately $8,620. For bus monitors, approximately $8,150. For teacher assistants, approximately $47,040.78, which is a grand total annually of $63,810.78. If we were to look at a 1.5% increase for bus drivers, it would be $12,930. For bus monitors, $12,225. And for teacher assistants, $70,561.19. That would be a grand total annually of $95,716.19. If we were to entertain a 2% increase for bus drivers, that would be $17,240. Bus monitors, $16,300. Teacher assistants, $94,081.58, which is a grand total annually of $127,621.58. Okay, capital outlay.
Ms. Wallace might be leaving, so Ms. Wallace, do you want to answer one of your
I
questions?
didn't know if you want to hold it to the end. I can address
I know that you have
questions
to
if
catch
needed.
the train, so
Okay.
I didn't want to lose you while you were up. We'll hold on.
Yes, sir.
Any commissioner got any questions on that presentation there? Mr. Belfield?
Yes, on the supplement, is the state putting anything into the supplement for teachers each year?
Yes, sir. I gave you that. If you go back to, I don't have the number. Right. This is it, state, yep. Right here is the amount that they're giving for this year. Last year, they gave that amount. But it's at least 1%.
I noticed you had Wade County up there, what percentage supplements that they were getting. You're not comparing the Nash County school system with Wade County School, which is the largest one in the state.
I
You just
am
put
not.
it in.
I just wanted you to see where it was, but no, I know we can't compete with them.
Other questions from commissioners? Mr. Outlaw?
Yes, sir.
That slide you showed us with the three positions, the
Mhm.
1.5, and 2%,
Yes, sir.
is that an ask, one of those particular?
I believe eventually it will become an ask, but it
Okay.
really depends on, it's a need. But we're really trying to follow the new legislative of them trying to get the approval for us to create and be more competitive with local salary scales.
Okay, will that be an ask this year, or?
That's really Dr. Ellis' question.
I mean, I know bus drivers, you've got a pretty significant issue with bus drivers.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
This will
Okay,
be
so
something
we'll
be
come
bringing
back to that, I guess. Okay.
Mr. Outlaw, I think as you're aware of, that's not only an issue locally, but that's across state.
Oh, I
We,
understand that.
yeah, we were at a conference in last week, and every district in this state is warm with that, as well as some other things. So it is and of course, with the private sector, getting warning drivers as well, this makes it doubly competitive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I know it's an issue across the
Thank you,
state.
sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Other commissioners?
I have another question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Bellfield.
Recruiting.
Mhm.
Are you having any difficulty in recruiting for the positions that you had up there?
Yes, there are challenges. We have partnered with more contracting companies for visiting international faculties. So we're recruiting for a lot of teachers that are actually from other countries. In terms of us recruiting locally, that too has been a challenge. And when you look at salaries that are in surrounding districts, some of the supplement that we have talked about, it makes it even more challenging for us to recruit quality teachers.
Do you have a record as to any teachers leaving, going to the private sector?
Yes, we have them leaving, going to many different sectors.
And do they give any reason or just leave?
We do have a lot that's exiting the profession. We have a tier group that is retiring, and we have some that are going to other LEAs.
Let me just ask one more thing. How many teacher assistants do we have?
Right now, about 123, but we have
123.
about 31 vacancies.
Would that 2% make it such that you would be able to recruit more teacher assistants? How would that put us in comparison to the counties around us in terms of
So-
pay? That and bus drivers, and clerical as well.
I can tell you with Wake, their bus drivers make about $18 an hour. I can't speak to that for the other ones, but we can investigate that and inquire based on a salary scale.
Would that 2% put you at 15?
They're at 15.
They are, so that
They're
2%
at
would be
15.
above that.
Everybody's at 15.
Because I don't think anybody's gonna ride to Wake County for
No.
$3.
But Wake County does pay a recruitment bonus as well, which we are competitive with them in recruiting. But they have challenges, probably more challenges than we are in terms of bus drivers because they're so much larger.
Okay.
Mhm. But we do have quite a bit of TAs that leave and go to Amazon. They can make $20 an hour. Walmart, different places like that are paying about $18 an hour. And we do hear from them in terms of their exit surveys about why they're leaving, and a lot of it is salary.
Well, it doesn't seem to me, I mean, it's a lot of money to me, but in the big picture, 2% doesn't seem like a lot of money if the payback is retention of the people you've got, and we need to keep those people.
Yes, sir.
And we definitely, all three of those positions are very important.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Wallace, on the TA situation though, some of that has to do with certification. They're asking them to give more. I mean, they have an education requirement. There's a lot of other things, because I started as a TA. And now there's 2-year degrees, so many years of community coming. I think that's what's hurting the TA conversation as well. Pre-K has more demands now on certification, things of that nature, and you're talking about a TA position. So I think that's what's changed too.
Yes.
Other questions from commissioners? I had three, and I'll do them real quick. Ms. Wallace, the item 4, you talked about recruitment bonuses and retention bonuses. Where did that money come from that y'all used to do that with? And my real question is it reoccurring money?
The recruitment bonus money, we repurposed some funding based on lap salaries and things like that, so that we could accrue that amount so that we could offer recruitment. Retention came from CARES 1 funding. That is not a recurring amount. And we did request last year for additional funding so that we could offer that again this year.
You asked,
Last year at the county commissioners meeting, the joint meeting.
okay. And the recruitment bonus, I guess you always got lap salaries, so that's y'all's board's decision whether to do that again or not.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And we are offering it this year as well.
okay.
Mhm.
And the other thing, to help clear up a couple of questions I've been asked by commissioners, maybe directed to you, Dr. Ellis. The offer the county board gave you for the 1% supplement that we were talking about it being a 2% with a match from the school board. And if I understand right, you were able to use the money that you got from the state to do that match. So are you using our money presently for supplements?
Correct. You, commissioners put in 1%, we were allotted the 1% from the state, so that's how we got the 2% this year.
Okay. And that state is expected to be reoccurring as well?
We believe that it will be.
Right now it is.
Right now it is, okay. Good.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, that's my questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening. Talk to start with a little bit about capital outlay projects, some of the ESSER funding that we have going on at this time, most of it since the fiscal year began. If I could, if you guys can hear me, it'd be better if I stand out here. Can you guys hear me? I'd rather. This here is ESSER funding, as you can see. This is the 200 wing Southern Nash Middle School. Not showing up too well, but you can see the existing older windows with the new windows we're replacing. We've completed the cafeteria, 100, 300, 400 wings on that campus. It's in excess of $700,000 contract. We did this in conjunction with suspended ceilings, lighting, and all the heating and air systems throughout the campus. This campus basically is totally renovated from a window and mechanical standpoint. This here's Spring Hope Elementary. You'll see here the auditorium windows. One thing we do have to go back and do, we're currently starting to paint this campus. If you can see back here, it's a teal green campus. This is a before picture, this is the after picture, but we are coming back and changing the bronze tone so that the teal kind of matches and doesn't stand out so much. But that's new windows in the auditorium building. Again, this was with ESSER's funding. Edwards Middle School is another school we've been spending a lot of money on. You can see here, this campus is totally completed with the windows. The entire campus has been totally renovated. It's about a $1.7 million expenditure. You can see here the VRF system. This is about a 1.5-year project. We're moving kids from one wing to another. We've completed the 700 wing. We just completed the admin this summer, and completing final inspections on the 900 wing hopefully tomorrow, and moving the kids back in. As you can see right here is the 900 wing. New LED lighting, all new heating and air, new suspended ceilings. You'll see this next picture here. This was classrooms and basically the way ceilings looked in the classrooms. And now you see the new heating and air. You got the new windows and suspended ceilings installed. We kind of did this in conjunction with contractors, my staff as well as contractors. This is something that was brought up at the last joint meeting. These are the multipurpose rooms. We're going around to all of the older multipurpose rooms, pulling out the old asbestos floor tile, putting in a solid floor. It's a sealed seam floor, and putting logos inside the gyms. This is Baskerville. This is D.S. Johnson. We've got this other slide, but it's Inglewood Elementary on the bottom. This here's Northern Nash Tennis Courts. We ran into a situation here where the courts were basically failing. We had roughly $120,000 athletic grant from the state. I put some capital funding with it. We came in, my staff took all the fencing down, we painted it, painted all the poles, and we installed all the new fabric. So basically on the right, now the courts are totally finished now. The right pictures before they painted the lines and installed the nets, but effective this week, those tennis courts are basically back, be ready for spring season. This is the new child nutrition warehouse. We're relocating it hopefully after the first of the year. As you can see, we've got coolers. One of the coolers on the far right, we've got two big deep freezers. They haven't been installed yet. They are hopefully in the next 2 weeks be installed. This will house all the child nutrition, not the cold food in the warehouse, but they'll house this and send it out to the schools. We're also putting in a generator. So if we ever have any issues, we can make sure that we don't have problems with the issues with the food. Now, Red Oak Elementary. As you can see, I'm just going back to when we first started. Got the middle school behind us. This is the elementary school layout. This is the floor plan. And I'll tell you now, this is the section we're really working on now. This is the K2 wing, which is currently housing the older, the K2 kids in the old building. This is the second, third, fourth, fifth, tying into the gymnasium, admin area, media center, dining room, kitchen. This is the front entrance where you'll be buzzed in through the school. You got two doors, basically a vestibule, where you can come in and then you'll be buzzed in to the main office. This is the restrooms, the gang restrooms, basically at the main corridor. That's the boys' restroom. This is the girls' restroom. Basically inside, it's much more finished now. We've got suspended ceilings installed, but this is the tile. Fixtures are going to be installed shortly. Again, this is the gymnasium. We will have new doors. Basically working from the K2 wing, they'll be finishing up with the gymnasium. This is work on the inside of the gymnasium. You'll see the new windows. This is the new paint colors, the paint schemes. It's the red oak blue and the northern Nash gold. You can see the new bleachers are installed, and we basically painted the gym. The floor is now sanded and covered. As you can see here, this is all the furniture waiting to go in the building. We're starting to put the materials or the desk and stuff together, so once we get a CO, we can move into the building. Northern Nash Fieldhouse. Again, we're still trying to secure funding with that, hopefully with a grant, with some deferred capital funds. We're slowly making our way to being able to secure the funding. Again, when we bid the project, it came in about $1.5 million to $1.7 million over budget, so we're sitting tight. Hopefully, when we secure funding, the contractor we're hoping will hold his bid. If not, we'll have to go back to bid on this project. But we're hoping to secure these pretty quick so we can move forward. Surplus properties. We just completed the sale of Rocky Mount Baseball Stadium. We received $110,352.50. Waiting on closing on that. Hopefully within the next 30 days, that will be off our books totally. Braswell Elementary School. Actually, we'll run into paper tomorrow, so we will start the upset bid process pretty quick. Hopefully it'll go quite a few rounds, the more money we get. That bid does start at $150,000, so. Next campus that I'll be bringing to the board at some point, early 2023, will be the W.O. Green campus. We're using that campus currently for storage. We do have records in one of the buildings that we relocate, but at some point in early 2023, hopefully we'll bring that building to the board for approval. And of course, we've got Cedar Grove and Swift Creek. Once we finish the Red Oak project in June, kids get out, we'll relocate all of the kids from Cedar Grove and Swift Creek, and then we'll be bringing those two campuses to the board for resolution.
And while you're on that slide,
Sure.
the Bradford Elementary upset bid process may start tomorrow.
It will run in the paper tomorrow. We run it one day.
My
Yes.
question is, did it get offered to Rocky Mountain City Council because it's in the city and they turned it down?
I had conversation with the interim city manager, who had conversation and declined. Whether or not they jump in at some point in the near future, it may or may not be a possibility. There has been some minor conversation since the decline. But we had already proceeded and we carried it to our board for approval.
But the statute that requires you to offer to the local entity has been
Yes, sir.
fulfilled, and it would have been Rocky Mountain because it's located in Rocky Mountain.
No, sir. We would not have to offer that to the city of Rocky Mountain. We did that out of courtesy.
Okay, is it not something that requires you to offer it to a local entity, or am I remembering that wrong?
No, sir. It was offered to Nash County commissioners for right of first refusal, and then we went to upset bid process.
So I have forgotten that it came to the commissioners, is that what you're saying?
I'm assuming it, yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know
Was
when
it-
that happened? Because we all seem to not remember, maybe, let me say we're gathering candles quickly on our
Sure.
board, so could we have done it, or can you just verify that it has been done?
I will, certainly will.
Maybe have a superintendent let the manager know.
Sure.
Okay. That's all I had, thank you.
Okay, all right. Next slide is the school capacity ADM. I've got these broken down basically in areas, basically the southern, and I call it the 58 sector with elementary schools. Bailey Elementary is, these are current 10-day ADM numbers from this year. And one thing I will say, if you look at the capacity numbers, these were capacities at ADM numbers at the time the school was built. So where they've changed, where the Red Oak Elementary campus has ADM numbers where they currently are when they drop the K-3 class sizes, this is not a true reflection of the numbers and how many empty classrooms we may have in a building, if that makes sense.
Could you say it again? I
So
didn't quite follow.
when we built Bailey Elementary, let's just take that in consideration. You got 664, well, that was based on number of classrooms at the class size state mandated at the time we built this campus.
Okay.
Whereas we mandated, I'm not sure, last couple, 3 years, we dropped all the class sizes, which this number is skewed.
Okay.
The new Red Oak Elementary is not. They were based on the new guidelines.
Okay, I called it that.
So right now, currently, Bailey's 540 with a capacity of 664. Middlesex 336 with 418 capacity. Spring Hope Elementary has a current 370 with 542. You'll see Cooper's is sitting right at capacity as we speak. Nashville Elementary, basically the same. Cedar Grove, again, one we're closing. I've got all three of those. Hooker's at 407 and 512. When we add existing numbers, this is the new Red Oak camp when we combine with an 821. So right now we're sitting pretty good, even though there's some development going on in that area. This is Winston Avenue, what I call the Big Three area in Williford, 535 and 625. You'll notice Inglewood is 555 and 508, but keep in mind that's a 3-5 campus, so we can stack more kids in those classrooms than we can to K2 at Winston. So Benvenue is 578, 668. Williford, of course, 226 and 581, which that's the pre-K campus and K2 kids.
Could you find something that sounds better than stack those kids? I'm kidding with you, sir.
Some of them at Inglewood probably are stacked. Johnson Elementary, Fairview, these are Edgecombe schools, 348, 575, 266, and 425. And Baskerville, 310, 427. Now moving to three of the middle schools at Southern Nash Middle, it's 802 and 850, so we're getting relatively close to capacity there. Nash Central Middle's at 503 and 670, and Red Oak Middle 810 and 850, so we are getting close to capacity on that campus as well. Edwards Middle is 407, 827. Rocky Mount Middle 400, 750. And Parker Middle 250, 557. Southern Nash High School 1,085 with 1,068 capacity. Nash Central's at 920 and 1150. Northern 1,060 and 1150. Rocky Mount High, 1,079 and 1,390. Early College currently is at 388 with a capacity of 500. City High, which is on the Rocky Mount Middle campus, is 115 with a capacity of 500. Tar River Academy, 74 with a capacity of 100. And NEDA, which is on the Williford campus, which made those numbers look down, are occupying the 400 wing with a capacity of 500. And any questions now? This is that you may.
Any questions from Commissioner Mr. Belfield?
And looking at the average daily attendance there, this is nothing that came from the school system, but I heard that you're looking at building a new middle school in the southern part of the county.
There has been a grant applied for. I think Nash County applied for it last year, this year as well. Did not receive the grant. It's the word I received for a possible new middle school at southern end of the county.
And then the middle school that's in that area now, where you plan?
We could, you know, there's several options. One of the options would be to maybe repurpose that campus for an elementary and stop some of the overcrowding that would come to pass at the Middlesex, the Bailey, the Spring Hope, the Coopers, the Nashville, depending upon how our board proceeds down the road. This is just an option that at some point we'll present.
Other questions on those slides? Mr. Davis, it just seems obvious that at some point, with where you got some schools, some schools, quite a few empty spaces, that we're gonna have to look at, or the school board is gonna have to look at the whole district as far as reassigning school districts. So I guess we all realize that's coming at some point, particularly with the high school, what looks like all across the board, really. But what does that look like to have to do? Is that something we work together to do it all at one time? Do we do it in pieces, or how are we thinking along that? I think we all in the room realize it's coming.
One thing I'll stand up for on my side of the county and for my district is you already see the high school is exceeding capacity.
Yeah.
And I'm not so extremely positive, but there's still a virtual academy that's going on, right?
Correct.
And so if that virtual academy was to extinguish, that puts more people back into the schools, so those numbers would fluctuate there. But as you can see, between that and the development that's going on the southern part of the county, I'm gonna need some help down there and soon.
Let me just address that question. I think we're sort of, while we have to address it, we don't necessarily want to jump into that. We don't want to put the cart before the horse. We want to do our due diligence to see what needs to be done. So I don't think Shannon or Dr. Ellis, you can address this in a position to actually talk to that issue right now.
I realize we don't have details, but my point is that you can see it's
Hey,
coming.
we looked at it, and our board will sit together. When we see that, we'll sit together and do an assessment with the superintendent, and we'll determine what direction we'll be going for.
Other questions, comments from commissioners? Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I stand before you this evening to talk to you about school safety and our SROs. So currently in our schools, what we have in terms of school safety is we have 11 full-time SROs. And this would include, we have 7 high schools. This includes SROs at 6 of those high schools, with the exception of National Rocky Mount Early College, which the college provides security for our early college high school. We have 6 SROs at our middle schools, and I would like to say on the campus of Rocky Mount Middle School, where City High and Rocky Mount Middle School sit in the same building, there's 1 SRO that patrols that campus, and then we have Tar River Academy, which sits on the same campus that has an SRO as well. So there's 2 SROs that's on that 1 campus. We have security cameras that's in all of our schools, internal and external. In the past years, our high schools have really had I would say, the vast amount of cameras within those buildings. What we have been working on over the past several years, couple of years actually, is trying to get more cameras inside of our elementary and middle schools. And we started on that, I believe Mr. McQueen was a year or 2 years ago. And hopefully by the end of this fall, or coming up on the beginning of this spring, we'll have all of the cameras that we have purchased in our middle and elementary schools on the inside, the internal part of the building. Because one of the things that...
Anybody monitor those cameras constantly?
There's no one monitoring the cameras constantly. Because unfortunately, we do not have the human capital to do that. But what it provides for us is if something happens, we have the ability to go back and use those cameras to try to find out what happened at that point.
We ought to do everything we can to prevent anything from happening. I know it probably gonna cost some money, but safety ought to be one of your top priorities.
Absolutely it is. Door badges at all of our schools and our auxiliary buildings. We have controlled access where you have to be buzzed into our buildings. The expectation has been sent out to all of our schools and auxiliary buildings that all doors should remain locked at all times. That doors should not be propped open. One of the things that the state of North Carolina did, I want to say starting back in June or July, was they asked all law enforcement agencies to work with schools by just riding through campuses, doing a check of doors to make sure that all doors were locked and not propped open, going into those schools, visiting with principals, just to let them know if they're finding anything or seeing anything on the outside of their campuses. We have had law enforcement agencies throughout this area who have been going to our schools doing that. So that has been a help, and it helps reinforce the message that it's important that doors remain locked and not propped open at all times. Thank you, Mr. McQueen. We also will begin in December a random wanding protocol for high schools. This would be random wanding of walkers, car riders, bus riders. Schools with those high schools will also have the option of, if they do not want to wand, they can randomly have them walk through the metal detectors that we have. There's some more conversation that we have to have around that with our high schools. But what we're hoping to have is at least one time a week, 4 times a month, that this is happening on our high school campuses. Schools certainly have the option to do more if they choose to, but we're asking at least 4 times a month, once a week. We also have what we call a threat or risk assessment protocol, and that is for students who have threatened harm to themselves or others. This is something that the state of North Carolina as well has been pushing that all schools have in place. We have been doing this threat assessment protocol now since, I want to say, around 2014, 2015, even before it was mandated by the state. And so if we have a student who threatens to harm themselves or others, they have to be 2 adults who are either a counselor, a school social worker, school nurse, or psychologist who goes in with that student, and there's a set protocol in terms of questions that are asked, and then based on how the student responds to those questions, it is determined whether it's low, medium, or high. And then based on that, if we believe that it's high, something that a parent needs to take the child to a medical office to have a threat assessment done outside of what we have done, because our assessment is really more of a risk assessment than it is a threat assessment. Then what we say to the parent is that we suggest that you take your child to have a threat assessment done by a medical official. And then sometimes we make it mandatory before the child can return to school, because we don't want any child hurting themselves, and we certainly don't want any child coming back to school to hurt others. So we applied for the SRO grant, and the amount of money that we asked for in that grant was about, I want to say $616,000, which would cover 8 elementary SROs and 8 middle school SROs. And because we are a low-wealth school district, it was a 4-to-1 match. And so we were awarded the grant. We have not received the money at this time, but we did receive the grant. And with that 4-to-1 match, what the state says is that we will give you $55,000 per SRO that you've asked for at elementary and middle schools. So the grant pays $44,000, and then the district would be expected to pay $11,000. So for example, if we hired an SRO at an elementary or middle school and their total cost was $68,000, $44,000 would come from the grant, and the district would be expected to take care of the $24,000. So I want to talk just a little more about the elementary funding for the SROs. So this grant is for two school years, the 22-23 and the 23-24 school year. Again, it's a 4-to-1 match, $44,000 coming from the state or the grant, and then the rest coming from the school district. What we have asked for was funding for 8 SROs to cover our 16 elementary schools. So what that would mean is that those SROs one officer would have 2 schools. So in the morning, they would be at one school, and then in the afternoon, they would be at another school. The total cost in terms, well, not the total cost, but using the grant funding of the 41 with 44,000 times 8 gives us $352,000. So the estimated cost for our elementary SROs is around $525,000. And this is based on what SROs cost us last school year. So the cost that would remain for the district for elementary SROs alone would be approximately $173,000. And again, this is what we were looking at based on what we spent on SROs last year, and talking about specifically 8 SROs for elementary schools. SRO grant funding for middle schools. Again, this is a 2-year grant. Again, the 4-to-1 match. We have 6 middle schools. So 6 middle school SROs times that 44 gives us 264. Our current cost for middle schools based on last year's numbers about $376,000. So our cost, or the district's cost for middle school SROs this year would be approximately $112,000. So funding for our high school SROs. For the 22-23 school year, for the first time, the state has specifically allocated funding for high school SROs. And they allocated funding in the amount of $58,480 per high school SRO. So we have a total of 6 high schools, excluding National Rocky Mount Early College. So that's 6 times $58,480 gives us a cost of $350,880 paid by the state. Our current cost for high school SROs is about $355,933. This again was based on last year's numbers. So the cost to the districts for high school SROs would be approximately $5,000. So SRO funding that is not covered by the grant or monies specifically allocated for high school SROs will come from our state 069, which is an at-risk funding or at-risk allotment. So paid from 069 during the 21-22 school year was approximately $733,000 for SROs. The estimated cost from 069 during the 22-23 school year would be approximately $291,000, saving the district approximately $442,000. Without the specified high school SRO money, the grant funding for the 6 middle school, 6 high school SROs, 6 middle school with 8 elementary SROs, from 069 this year, we would have paid $1,259,000. Any questions for me? Yes, ma'am.
Go back to the school safety. I have a concern because how are you all going to choose? It's random students, but how do we ensure that some students aren't profiled? And I know many times that administrators and teachers know who the problem students are, but how are you going to ensure that they are not profiled by race or ethnicity or whatever?
So what we have asked, or what we will ask schools to do is that, first of all, whenever they do a random wanding, they would, if they do on a bus, they would have to put which bus they random profile. So we'll know that on December 15th at Rocky Mount High School, bus 352, bus 211, and bus 190 were the 3 buses that were randomly chosen. So if we go back to January and another wanding day, and we see that those 3 buses or 2 of those buses have come up, and we know Rocky Mount High School campus have 18 buses on it, then we know that's not random, that it need to be more random, and they have to turn that information into us. For students who are riding in cars, it's going to be a little more difficult. What we have done in the past is we've said every 10 cars that pull up. So This first car would be the first car that I pull. 10 cars after that, then I pull another student. 10 cars after that, I pull another student. And what we're not asking the schools to try to do 50 or 100 kids who are riding in a car, because again, you're fighting against trying to get kids out of the cars into schools and get school started. But to pull enough students so that we are making sure that it is a random process. For those students in high school who drive to school, again, it would be the same thing. It would either be every 10 students who are driving, every 5 students, whatever it is that the school decides on. When they give us a report, they would have to show us in that report how that process was random.
In connection with school safety, mental health is mighty important. It's beginning to escalate people with mental problems here in the United States. It's causing a lot of unsafe situations. Are you all addressing mental health along with your safety?
Yes, sir. We have a school-based mental health program in every one of our schools, from elementary to high. I think there's 4 or 5 different mental health agencies who are working with our schools to fulfill this school-based mental health program. We also have a social-emotional learning curriculum for our middle and high schools. We've worked hard with our curriculum and instruction team to try to make sure that SEL is built into the curriculum so that it's not something else that teachers are doing, but it's built into our curriculum. And the SEL is really about checkpoints for students to see where they are throughout the day, to see if there are any issues that are stemming that we might can intervene and get ahead of. We have, along the lines of the mental health piece, we have 12 social workers throughout the district to also help provide services or help families get the services that they may need. We have 20 school nurses throughout our school district. Each school has at least one counselor. So we have tried to cover the gamut as best we can and ensuring that personnel is in each school to try to provide services for kids as needed.
Bullying is an issue that may not be easy to handle unless those that are being bullied are comfortable in letting the administration know, of the schools, know of the teachers, and sometimes they get overlooked, and something as a result of it, the person want to defend themselves, may end up with a weapon. It may not be a gun, it could be a knife or something else that they use, they think to defend themselves. So, to me, that bullying is an issue too that should be addressed. And I'm not saying you're not addressing it,
Right.
but I'm just placing some emphasis on it.
Yes, sir. We have a bullying protocol that is aligned to our Board of Education policy and aligned to state and federal guidelines as it relates to bullying and harassing behavior. Our principals and assistant principals and teachers know that if a student or a parent says that a child is being bullied, the parent doesn't have to put it in writing. We ask them to so we can have has it as documentation, but even if they don't put it in writing, our principals, assistant principals know that there's a protocol that they're supposed to go through to investigate that situation. Sometimes it's informal, but most often it's a formal process.
Dr. Farrell, let me just touch on what Mr. Bell just said, because basically, that's a great question as far as we know the mental health issue is not only local, it's across the state, across the nation. One of the things we went through last week in the State School Board Association Conference was mental health. They focus a whole lot on that. One of the things that there was couple of programs that talked to that issue. And one of the things that was discussed, and I shared with them what Dr. Farrell is doing with the team here, and they were so amazed. They came back, one of the leaders for the state came back with me when we came back, and we had a sit-down conference with Dr. Farrell, with what Nash County was doing with mental health. And this quotes where you guys are leading the edge. We like to use what you're doing across the state to pilot some other areas. We started this program probably about 3 or 4 years ago, Dr. Farrell.
Yes, sir.
And right now it's paying off. We're seeing fruits of the labor. And not only is it paying off in Nash County, but it's also being recognized across the state.
That's good.
Thank you, Dr. Farrell.
Other questions, Mr. Brownell?
Yeah, I just clarify a few things. SROs. I think we've currently got SROs in the high schools and the middle schools.
Yes, sir.
And you talked about grant funding versus county funding, savings. Are you saying that the state is providing grant funding for high school, middle, and some elementary schools? And that's going to result in a savings to the school system based on current spending?
Yes, sir. So what the state did, the state has always allotted us 069, or what they call at-risk funding.
Yeah.
And so we have always taken the money or the costs for SROs out of that funding. Well, this year, the state says we're going to specifically allocate $58,450 for each high school and each LEA to help cover the costs of SROs.
That's not a grant?
No, sir.
That'll be recurring?
Yes, sir. That had, well, we hope. That had never been done before. And so that takes care of the high school piece. What we did was in June, we applied for the school safety SRO grant. And what we asked for was grant funding to cover 8 elementary SROs and 6 middle school SROs. And so that's where the $616,000 came in.
So you're talking about for elementary grant money and middle school grant money?
Yes, sir.
So that grant money would be gone in what period of time, and then it'd be back to 069?
It would be gone at the end of the 23-24 school year.
Okay, so that's just a temporary
Yes, sir.
savings in 069.
Yes, sir.
You talked about the SROs, are they 12-month employees or 10-month employees?
They are 12-month employees, but they don't work necessarily 12 months with us.
Okay,
But we
where do
cover-
they work?
They work 10, at the high school and middle school, they work the 10 months that we're in school, and then they work our summer school programs.
But
So-
they are working with the school system?
But once the summer school program is over, so if we end summer school on July 15th, then those officers go to their respective law enforcement agencies. But our school district covers the full cost of SROs.
Yes. So I'm trying to figure out in my mind, if you go back to your respective law enforcement agency, then that at most is a 2-month utilization of that person.
1 month to 2 months, yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm wondering, what are they, I just don't understand what they're doing for 1 or 2 months.
In that
It
time,
seems to me like if you need them for 1 or 2 months, then you need them for 11 or 12 months.
well, there are also certifications and in-service training that they've got to keep up with to maintain their law
So
enforcement
that's part of their
certifications.
training.
Yes, sir.
So they're not actually in the general workforce on the street?
They may be, but for a very short period of time because, for the other time, they're in the schools.
Yeah.
So they've got to pick up their mandated training at other times, and that's the only time they have to get that training because the SRO position in of itself requires annual training.
So if I'm a regular officer on the Nash County Sheriff's Office, for example, when do I get my training? I'm a
Anytime during-
12-month employee,
Anytime during the year
so,
that you can. Some of it is online, but it's still a mandated set of hours. So
Okay.
you can either get it online or you can go to a classroom setting and get in a classroom setting at Nash Community College or.
So the total cost of the SRO then would include full equipment, as anybody that was on the street for 12 months.
Yes, we pay for their benefits and
Well,
their
I'm talking
total
about
salary
vehicles
package.
and that sort of thing.
We have in the past, but if I'm correct, we did not pay for vehicles and fuel last year, did we?
Not as I remember, the last thing I remember looking at was all salary and.
So that 68 doesn't include the cost of the vehicle, that's just salary and benefits?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And to my recollection, we were not charged for vehicles or supplies or gas from either agency last school year.
All right, you talked about 1 per 2 elementary schools.
Mhm.
Just as for example, in Red Oak, would Red Oak Middle and Red Oak Elementary be a better fit 1 for 2 rather than taking that elementary SRO in Red Oak and maybe going to some other location away from that area?
So when we look at most often where school shootings have occurred, most often it occurs in a middle or high school. There have been the exceptions where it's been an elementary school, and that was an individual from the outside. But when you look at most school shootings, most of them are happening with an individual who attends or who did attend a middle or a high school. So we have, as we have done in the past, we have worked strategically to make sure that middle and high schools were covered with a full-time SRO. And so our hopes here is that we will pair elementary schools based on location so that there's an SRO who can easily travel between those two schools.
Well, I just, that's your call, not mine, but I would encourage you, if you're gonna do that, I think that's good, that's better than what we got now. But I wouldn't be so predictable to say, I'm gonna be at this elementary school in the morning
Absolutely.
and this elementary school in the afternoon. I think I'd mix it up and that sort of thing.
Yes, sir.
Will Nash County Sheriff's Office provide a vehicle? And we replenish vehicles every year. So there's always a vehicle at every elementary school with somebody designated to move that vehicle around every day.
Now, that has not been a part of our conversations. What has been a part of the conversation is that the SRO would be in uniform and they would have a car.
I'm just saying the visible presence of a vehicle, I think, will help. And I know we replenish vehicles every year, and they're, from appearance standpoint, they're regular vehicles, they just are high mileage. But if that vehicle is placed on campus in a conspicuous location and moved around from time to time, it's not like you're just gonna sit it on the street and I go by there every day and I say, wow, there's nobody in that vehicle, I come by here every day. So that's just a recommendation, and every time we meet, I make that recommendation. I think it'd be a good thing to do. The other thing you talked about, as law enforcement passes the schools, do they, as a routine, if I go by Winstead Avenue, for example, if I'm a Rocky Mount policeman, or I go by one of the county elementary schools, I go by that school, Southern Nash Middle School, do I just flip through there and go through that campus as I'm going by just for that presence?
It would be hard for me to say that that happens all the time.
I just
But-
think that would be a good thing if they could do that, because that's very unpredictable when they're coming by there. And if I'm coming by there anyway, and I'm just not going to an emergency, I'm just looking a speed or whatever I'm looking, it wouldn't take but a minute or two to just ride through that campus, and just a recommendation.
What I can say is that there's certainly times when officers are riding by schools and they stop in. But it is not something where we have spoken to either law enforcement agency and said, can you make sure that this is happening? But certainly, when we come to the table, we'll talk more about the elementary SROs, that this is something that we can talk about.
I think that'd be a good thing to do if they would agree to do that.
But I will tell you that the highway patrol in of itself does go through the campuses, even though it's the highway patrol and you don't readily think that a highway patrol would do something like that. They do. Matter of fact, when they go through, they are required to give a particular kind of code so it's logged in the system, and you can get a copy of that log to show just how many troopers and how much time they're spending at the schools, and you'd be surprised you'd be surprised at the partnerships that are out there. You may not always see it, but that's the beauty of it. They're there a lot.
Yeah.
And that goes for the county, the city, any law enforcement
I'm
agency.
not being critical, I'm just
Yeah.
saying that is a presence, and that's unpredictable presence, and I think it could have an impact.
Absolutely, and I would be remiss if I did not say that we have great partnerships with both Nash County Sheriff Department and Rocky Mount Police Department when we are in need of support and help. They have always been willing to step up and to help us, so we are grateful for the partnership that exists with our school district and those two agencies.
Thank you.
And also, our local police departments do a good job. We do have elementary schools that are in cities like Spring Hope, Middlesex, and Bailey.
Nationally.
They do an excellent job of going by and checking into schools, doing walkthroughs, and they're unpredictable when they're gonna show up, but they usually do it every day, or used to.
I believe if we made that request, I believe you'd find the cooperation there to do it, I believe. The vehicle and the presence riding through.
We certainly will make mention of that. And thank you, Mr. Lamb, for adding that, because that is certainly true.
Other questions from Commissioner?
Do you have a system-wide safety slogan?
System-wide safety slogan? No, sir, we do not.
The reason I ask that, because more eyes is better than just one set of law enforcement eyes or something. I suggest one. See something, say something.
I like that.
See something, say something.
We do have the Say Something anonymous reporting system. That again, that is a tool that was given to all schools by the state, where students or parents can anonymously report anything that they see, and our students do use it. And so that is something that we have in place. But we do not have a slogan, but something else I will add to talk with our district safety team about.
Yeah, and plus that goes along with see something, say something. Might be too many cars in the floor. Say something that need to be corrected. Safety, it just goes a long ways, not just with security, but safety with incidents.
Absolutely.
But see something, say something. Works pretty good.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'd like to say good evening, everyone. I'm Tremaine McQueen, the Executive Director of Technology here at the Nash County Public Schools, and I'm here tonight to share a few successes and current conditions of our technology department. But before I begin, I would like to share some gratitude with my technology department. And if you look at the slide, this year and the previous year, we have had the best 2 years in a long time. We were able to complete projects. We were awarded grants. We've been able to fully accommodate the district's technology needs without any financial limitations. So a few of the projects are listed here, if you can see, and I can't hardly see. All right, we got our one-to-one initiative, and our refresh plan supports it. We got our ECF grants, as well as student hotspots, and our interactive board project. So let's talk a little bit about our refresh plan. So 2 years ago, we developed a refresh plan, and the goal of that plan was to place adequate devices in the hands of our staff and our students. So we are currently in the second year of that plan, and it has been a success, I may say. But to remind you what it looks like, if you look here, our pre-K through first grade will refresh their devices every 4 years. Those particular devices are grade specific, and they will remain in those grades. Our students in our 2nd, 5th, and 9th grade will receive a new device annually, and they will keep those devices 4 years. And we also have about 1,900 staff members, and we will refresh those devices, a quarter of their devices, annually. And if you see there, the cost to maintain this refresh plan is $1.8 million. So we are currently utilizing the ESSER funds to support this plan. So let's talk about our grants. So we've done our due diligence in regards to capitalizing on grant opportunities. The emergency connectivity funding is a one-time COVID relief federal grant to help schools and libraries purchase devices and hotspots to support remote learning. So we were awarded $1.8 million of the ECF grant funding. Now, $1.1 million went towards student devices, $193,000 went towards staff devices, $515,000 went towards 26 hotspots with unlimited data. Okay? So the ECF grant allowed us to purchase hotspots and all student devices in this year's refresh plan at no out-of-pocket cost to our district. And the only thing that we were responsible for with this without this cost, was just the warranty for the devices, because the grant wouldn't cover that. Moving on to our hotspots. Now, we are partners with T-Mobile, and we're also members of their 10 Million project. So this project offers our students free hotspots with 100 gigs of data per year. Now, although the gesture seems like it's really nice and 100 gigs may seem like it's a lot, but in terms of students, y'all have kids and grandkids. If you give them a hotspot, they will eat that data up. You know, they connect they connect Xboxes, PlayStations, and whatever. So the ECF grant that I spoke of previously has helped to circumvent this. We utilized this grant to put unlimited data on the 2,600 hotspots, and it's broken out to 1,300 of those particular hotspots are currently in the hands of students right now. So we put those unlimited data on those devices. And we also have an additional 1,300 hotspots that are available for student use per their request. So if we move on to our interactive board project. Now, the goal of this project is to replace our old outdated boards and projectors with new state-of-the-art, new interactive panels called Newline. So we will install a new panel in every class to improve the overall classroom experience. Now, we have successfully installed 617 interactive panels throughout the district. Now, we've completed all the installations for our elementary schools, and we're currently working on our secondary, which is our middle and high. So we hope to have this project completed prior to the end of the school year. And another significant thing about our interactive panels, they did come with, when I worked this plan out, that they came with a 7-year warranty, which is really good. So these particular devices or these interactive boards should last us for more than 10 years. And one thing I want to point out, this project was also funded by ESSER. All right, looking ahead, most of the projects that I mentioned today are in some way connected to ESSER funding. So as ESSER funding is expiring, we need to secure a funding source to support this refresh plan. So as the technology director, it's my priority to make sure that students and staff have the latest and greatest updated devices and the best technologies. And so that they can do their work and also so that they can get the instruction that they need. That's all I have. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
How are the teachers using this technology in their class from an academic standpoint?
From an academic standpoint, how are the teachers using this in class? Can one of you guys? Yes.
I'll start. Good evening, I'm Melissa Dennison Smith, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Academic Services and Accountability. Not only are the teachers using the technology, what's powerful is that when you go into classrooms, you can see the students interacting with the technology as well. But they use them for things like virtual meetings. They use them for things like small group instruction. They're used for group work and collaboration. Even though COVID imposed quite a few hardships on us, what COVID also showed us is that we were underutilizing the technology that we had at our disposal. They're used for assessments. They're pretty much used in schools the same way that we use technology at the central office. There's not much that we use technology for that teachers and students don't use technology for.
Well, I'm just wondering, technology being used in the classroom, specifically rather than going to a class to learn how to use the technology, but how academically they using technology. And in some places they are. So I was just wondering what national.
And Mr. Fairfield, some of our textbooks are also digital. So we have blended. They're print copies, but we have digital copies as well. Mainly in our middle schools and high schools, but oftentimes in our elementary schools as well. Did that answer your question?
When do the ESSER funds go away?
I wish you could see it. Well, there is the ESSER fund that is ESSER Fund 2. You want to talk about it?
Sure.
Go ahead.
One pot of money sunsets
Yes.
September of 2023, and there's another pot of money that we're spending that sunsets September of 2024.
So what is that pot? What is the amount in that pot?
It's a lot. I know for my
You
department,
said 1.8 million, is that the total of the two pots?
no, sir. We probably had, and you probably should respond to that, Doug, but approximately, I would say over 20 million for both pots of money.
How did you handle those pots before ESSER?
We were frugal and good stewards of the
You
monies.
just gave yourself an out then.
Yeah, we were frugal and good stewards of the monies that were allocated to us. But just like Mr. McQueen said, it's been a blessing to pretty much be able to get anything that we need to ensure that our students and staff are successful.
You could only use them for four, like criteria, four things: technology, learning, catching up learning. There was
Contract.
So it was only limited where you could spend these funds.
So you got a couple of years to figure out how you're gonna,
Well, I think we've spoken for most of the money is being spent based on capital improvements and things of that nature. What we got real lucky in is Mr. McQueen's, right when that dropped, our technology was We used it way too long.
Other questions on this subject matter?
Let me just make a quick point on that too, with Mr. McQueen, this group, Mr. Allen, that's a great question you asked. But one of the things that you find out across the state again, I'm always looking at how Nash County compares across the state, even to this group. And you look at Wake, you look at Charlotte, we were on the leading edge when it came to one-to-one initiatives. There was a lot of districts that asked us, how were we able to do this? Mr. McQueen and his team started this thing probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And when laptops were hard to come through, they had negotiated with partnership with different industries and computer system groups that allowed us to be ahead of the curve when it came to this. So you guys have been doing this for a minute now.
Well, and that's kind of where we want to stay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Main last question, do you enjoy what you do, sir?
I love what I do.
You show it. Yes, appreciate it. Thank you.
Since we talked about JROTC as a topic that Mr. Sharp wanted to address, I'm gonna give the floor to him.
Before we jump to GROTC, Mr. McQueen, real quick, I just want you guys to know that this has been a relatively difficult year for him. His mom passed away, as well as his mother-in-law, within a week's span. And so he's been due diligent, just being in this process with it, staying with the system, what's going on. So we've been having a lot of prayer through his family, but thank you for all your support and what you do, even in the midst of your trying times you have, so thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things that I want to talk about, this is near and dear to my heart, and I heard Mr. Outlaw, you came to see the superintendent regarding this as well with a couple of people. And I just wanted to make sure that we were all clear on what was going on with this process. This is not a Nash County Board of Education decision. It goes beyond us. We found out about this probably, Dr. Ellis, how long ago?
We've been, September 2021, it was one of the first retirements for JROTC.
So one of the things that I asked the question, well, where are we going with this? So being a part of the Air Force family, I was able to get some inroads with some people in Alabama, the regional director for this. And he emailed me and says, Mr. Sharp, this is a problem. We're on a twofold battle. There's legislation in the House in D.C. and there's legislation in the Senate in D.C. regarding this issue. The legislation in the House is pretty much a done deal because they want to expand JROTC. The legislation in the Senate, it talks about who can teach JROTC. If you cannot, we are in good shape when it comes to Nash Central because we have the Naval Group here, our junior ROTC. In Rocky Mountain High School, we have the Air Force, we're in good shape with that too because we have 2 officers. In order to maintain a program, you gotta have 2 officers, 1 enlisted, 1 officer. If you don't have that, then your school's on probation. And you got a length of time before you can fill that. There's 3 actual criteria. One of them being an officer and an enlisted person, and you gotta have 10% of your population gotta be in the program. So when I heard through that situation, I had got on the phone, I talked with North Carolina School Board Association legal team, says, hey, who's in charge of this? So they directed me to 3 groups, 3 offices. Of course, 2 of them are being gone, and that's Senator Burr and Butterfield and Senator Tillis. I was able to get into Senator Tillis' office, I think it was 10/17. I met with one of his staffers down in D.C. on 10/17 just to talk through this thing. We talked through it, and what she told me was, Mr. Sharp, we got legislation in the House that's passing, but there's a lot of legislation in the Senate that we can't talk to right now because they're in recess. And so basically, that NDAA Act or the expense bill for that, it's probably about, I don't know, 8-10 inches thick. And I started going through that. There's nowhere in the world, I'm not smart enough to go through all that, to try to find it. So what they're doing is looking at what we can do or find parts of that legislation that we can talk to our senators. I've asked Dr. Ellis to put together some information on our website that people can go to and write to their senators with the language that's needed that says we want to continue to support. One of the things that we've asked to do, and I got this email back from Megan just the other day. She's out of Senator Tiller's office. This is what she said. She said, we're in recess and we'll return to session next week. At that time, the representative of both chambers of Congress will continue conferencing the NDAA. The goal is to compromise between the House and the Senate version. Recognize regarding the changes that we talked about, because one of the things that we said, we need to be able to relax what the requirements are to be able to be the junior ROTC. So they're talking about trying to relax what the requirements are. That's what they're negotiating. That's what they're going in chambers and conference when they got back to talk through. Of course, what we know is that's going to take a while. So what we've also did, we've actually legislated up with our national school or the state school board association with our legal team there to sort of get with the national group to sort of help all of school systems throughout the country push this agenda. So whoever senator is on that committee, they can talk to them. What we would ask that you would do is that you would, and I know you will because you're 200% behind junior ROTC program in Nash County. Right now, we're gonna lose Southern Nash and we're gonna lose Northern Nash. Both of those programs, we're gonna lose them at the end of 31 May this school year.
Well, what's the change that is gonna cause you to lose them if certain things aren't provided?
You don't have instructors. In order to be, you gotta have 2 instructors for the military.
Yeah,
One of them's gotta be listed.
I heard you say that, but isn't it our military responsible for providing what they used to? Because I
They
know
still
when I
do.
was
There's
in
a
school,
list that they used to send us.
they provided the officers that were needed.
So it's just like teachers. The officers aren't required to come there. It's recruitment. It's just like we can't find teachers. It's the same way with officers in the junior ROTC program.
I bet you some of the retired officers and non-commissioned officers would be glad that.
So here's a caveat there, Mr. Bedfield. I gave you the doctor right? According to the Air Force policy, in order for you to be an officer, you cannot have been out of the military no more than 5 to 7 years. So if you're out that past that, you're disqualified. And at the same token with the enlisted person, because there's a lot of folks that's in the VFW and other programs that could probably step in and help with do this, but the way the policy is written for the United States Air Force, they can't do it. So that's the legislation that we're trying to change. It says, and then I'll finish reading this, the Senate is amiable of broadening the scopes of eligible instructors. So they're listening to that, but it's just a matter of pushing it through. So we gotta wait to see how that happens.
The military need officers, they're running short too. And
right.
This is a good way of putting young kids in, making a career.
So what you do, Mr. Bedfield, you contact your senator and you tell them that we need to be talked through this bill. And so basically what we need to do is contact our senators and tell them, and that's the 2023 NDAA bill. That's that bill. It's on the floor right now.
Well, do we plan to do that individually or as a body?
Well, we're actually...
There are lots of bodies.
Right. So what we've done is actually have the state, because once we've formulated the letter that should go out with that, we've actually pushed it up to the state legislature. So they'll push it out to the nation as far as the National School Board Association. So we're trying to unify this board itself to try to have a form letter reach out to the people that serve the community.
Do we need a resolution or a form letter? Would a resolution be better to go to the state and then to Tillis and
that's great.
Bud,
So,
or what do we need to do?
We need, if we could put together a resolution stating that, and that's a great.
Is that something that we could do, Mr. Chairman, with the Association of commissioners across the state, would they pick that up? I mean, this is an issue across the
Yes, sir.
state.
So the education, the
And you've
North
got your own
Yeah,
education law.
Yeah, we're doing that already. So that's why I'm appealing to you guys, if you guys can do the same thing with the commissioners across the state. Because it's impacting, there are schools in all over the state that when I brought this up at the state law conference in Asheville about 3 weeks ago, there were Board of Education members that didn't know anything about it.
Why couldn't we do a resolution and copy the counties, the other 99 counties, and ask them to consider the same? And you do the same with the boards of education?
We're processing that right now as we speak. As a matter of fact, Mr. Outlaw, as I said, Dr. Ellis, I asked him to put together a place on the website so that people could go in the county or in our area and pull from that website and get that letter and send it out individually as well. So we want to flood them with that information. And it's critical because their meeting session started on November 14th. So they're going to start caucusing, I think, the 1st of December, 4th, 5th of December, right around the 1st of December. So when they start caucusing that, one of the things I asked them to do, and that's what Megan's supposed to get back with me, who are the people that's on the committee? So, you know, they're from different states. So what our folks will do is find out who those folks are in their state and sort of appeal to them directly. So if you guys could do the same thing from the commissioner side, that'd be great.
And the other school systems
Yes,
are doing the
yes,
same?
sir, yes, sir.
Well, I wish I knew this. I just got back from our legislative conference in Raleigh, and we've already set goals for the federal and the state. And I can contact the board and see, because the board is going to review what we did last week, and they can add or delete.
But I don't know that we couldn't accomplish the same thing, Mr. Barfield, if we did a resolution and we just sent it to all the other counties.
Yeah, well, we can, and we can do a resolution and send it directly to the Congress. Yeah, we can do a resolution and send it directly to Congress. We can do one and also send to the
send it to our local
state
legislators at the state.
Yeah.
It's a very important program.
It is.
And,
It is.
I don't know what it's gonna take to fix it, but I sure hate to lose it.
At the rate we're going right now, we will lose Northern Nash and we will lose Southern at the end of the school year. Right now, actually, it's a year, and I think Northern is further out than Southern because we lost the officer earlier than Southern lost theirs.
Well, and I'm an Air Force person too, so, but if you couldn't get Air Force, maybe it could be Navy.
Well, we
Maybe
got
you
the
have
Navy.
more- I know you got Navy, but you could have more Navy.
Right.
Something to expose those kids to what they get out of that program. Having a second Navy is better than having nothing.
Here's the caveat there too, Mr. Outlaw. With the Air Force, they do matching. With the fund who pay for that outfit, the Air Force is matching. Army don't. I don't know if the Navy does. So if they got a salary amount, the Air Force will match what they'll pay a certain percentage of that salary, MIP.
And one thing I've noticed in my moving around, you have more ROTCs of Air Force than you do of the Army, Marines, or Navy. Very few Navy. And ought to be an opportunity for all of them, all branches.
Again, we need instructors.
But get foot in the door, I guess we need to do what you are trying to do now.
You said this came to you in September 2021?
Top.
You said something about September.
I'll read, it kind of, give you from the school system. We've had 2 vacant positions for Southern Nash that opened up 8 to 9 months ago. They have not been filled. One officer retired, the other one transferred to Florida. So since 7 to 8 months of it being on the website for armed services, no one's got it. At Northern, they had a retirement last year, and they have a possible transfer this year. Since they only have one instructor, they automatically go on probation, and they are down to 75 students, which Mr. Sharp said you gotta have 10%, which means they need 100 kids roughly. So both of those programs will be on probation at the end of May 31st, so.
Well, that will be eliminated in May 31st. They're on probation currently.
I'm taking my notes, Mr. Outlaw, and we will get together on that, decide best how to do it.
I just don't know what the requirements are for those instructors. If you are a Legion member, you are a veteran, and I would assume a good number of those people would probably qualify, if not for the out of the military, for 4 or 5 years.
So, well, I guess, Ms. Allen, what it's saying is, if you've been out for 5 to 7 years, you don't qualify.
Right, that's my
You got-
point.
Yeah, you gotta be, and so that's the purpose of
We
this.
need to get that changed.
That's right, and that's the purpose of what, she says they're minimal to what we recommend, so they just gotta go through that coxing process with it.
Time we get through all this. and
That's
get it,
right, you're absolutely
we'll
right.
get those programs will be gone.
That's
Let's start
exactly,
all
that's,
over.
yeah, absolutely. So when we found out about the 21st of this year, that's when we just started, hey, this can't happen, we need to get this ball rolling.
Just as a for instance, if you had 2 Legion or 4 Legion members that qualified as far, well, they would qualify just by simply their veterans
Right.
that were willing to teach the program, and all you needed was an exception for that timing. What could we do to get an exception short term for the time?
Well, one of the things I asked Megan to do, if she could talk to that group to give us an extension. So instead of being eliminated at the end of the school year, give it, as long as we show some traction, and we got this thing going on now with the Senate hearing, give us some traction, give us some leeway.
I know the Legion has expressed a lot of
Right.
interest.
And they showed up at a board meeting or two as well, so.
What also would help is there's a push within the military to make active duty personnel eligible to teach it. Enlisted soldiers could get this as a duty station out of Seymour Johnson, so if we push that they pay the fund, they're paying 100% of their salary.
Well, whatever we can
and
do
get-
long term is great, but
That's
we
right.
need to do something short term
And I think
to
that
try to.
short-term piece could be have the military make it a duty station for active soldiers.
And that's
And that's in the works.
And that's, oh no, that's gotta go through legislation, that's that amendment part they gotta go through.
It's being discussed.
Yeah, you know how that goes. Yeah, I know, I know.
But just remember now, all those candidates have to go through ROTC first. It doesn't go through us, so all have to be approved. So that's the concern I have.
Yeah, I'm just looking ways that we could probably get some exceptions to be able to continue the program until we could work through the bigger problems. And getting something through Congress is good luck.
Needle in a haystack, I understand. Well, we just wanna put that up there to appeal for your support. I appreciate what you guys are saying, what you can do to help out. But just continue to talk to it. And one of the things that we wanna dispel this normal. This is not the school system cutting the program. This is not the school system cutting this program.
So the next the next topic's gonna be demerger. Tremaine left me on the slide, so. He's coming. So Mr. Sharp is gonna speak to a slide, I believe it's,
Well, there's not a lot of,
go ahead. There you go.
is there another piece of that?
There you
Yeah.
go.
There's not a lot to talk about. You guys know the story behind this. Right now, as far as the timeline, what's gonna trigger this thing is actually, Edgecombe County Commissioners have decided that they're gonna, when they stop paying that fund gap, then that's when it initiates the process, what's gonna happen. And they said that, this is just, they say it again, there's no action behind this, that they're committed to paying the final physical costs up to 2023-24. So, of course, you know, once they stop paying it, then that's the trigger. So we don't have anything to do, the Nash County Board of Education has nothing to do with anything else. But what I've asked Dr. Ellis to do over about a year ago because we see it coming down the pipeline. The key thing is, I'm gonna say like my predecessor, I love her dearly, God rest her soul, Andy, is keep the main thing, and that's educating our children, all of them. So basically, what I've asked Dr. Ellis to do, to get with Dr. Valerie Bridges to look at talking about or initiate a conversation about the transition. I've also had a meeting with the chair for the Edgecombe Board of Education. There's not a lot we can talk about until we actually, the trigger's pulled. So basically, the trigger has not been pulled. Once the trigger's pulled, there's a list of things that's gonna happen, that needs to happen. So it's gonna take up to 2 years. That's all I got to say to that one. And I don't have any answers to anybody else. You guys know it. You guys been working with Edgecombe as much as anybody else. So I just want to bring this group up, says, hey, this is where we are. Once the trigger's pulled, Dr. Ellis has already met with Bridges, I think, once, and just started talking about some transition stuff. We're trying to get ahead of the curve when it happens.
But we are ahead of the curve on some of these timeline things, right?
Am I hearing you correctly? You said 2 years, after 2 years, most school years that Edgecombe is gonna stop funding?
Well, actually, basically, yeah.
Let me tell the commissioner side of this, Chairman Shaw, if we can.
Yes, sir.
You say until something happens, but our board and board commissioners in Edgecombe feel like something's already significantly happened. They have voted that they're gonna fund the schools through the end of this current year, which means it's gonna end in June. So when we go back to school next year, they're not gonna fund those kids to come to our school. And then that triggers what's in the general statute, which means they will get a free year. In our school system, the board of commissioners on the Nash side is gonna have to pick up. And then after that happens for 1 year, then it automatically, the kids will end up going back to Edgecombe at the end of the 23-24 school year. But to say we got to wait, I don't think we need to wait, because when they took that vote, the way I see it, and talking with the chairman of the Edgecombe County Commissioners, that started this process, and we don't need to just have 9 months to get ready. We need to be getting ready now, the way I see it, because we're gonna have to fund, as the Nash County Board, what the difference is for next year already. We know that, and the general statutes allow them to do that, and our board begged them to let's work together and not do it that way, but they chose to do it that way, so that's the hand we're dealt. So therefore, I think we need to be dealing with it immediately, quite frankly.
But not only that, you talked earlier about the capacity in the schools and maybe some potential redistricting. It seems to me like all this ties at the same time, because you'll have a reorganization of your board, I believe, down to 9 members, and you don't want to have 6 months to put that in place.
If I read the legislation right, Mr. Outlaw, that's not the case.
Well, what is the case, sir? Am I misunderstanding that?
Yeah, because if you read, and this is what I would say, go back and read the law on what the legislation piece is when it came to board members, and ask the same question. And I'll leave that to everybody in this room to go back and.
What is the legislation? Mr. Chairman, clarify it for me then.
Legislation originally indicated in it that at the end of that 1 period, that the school board would then revert from 11 members to 9 members. The final piece of legislation did not state that.
So there's no definite time frame for that to happen?
It is no definite time frame. Therefore, that's why I feel we need to be working on it presently now. And of course, the sensible thing to do, and I'll say it, I don't mind saying it, since it will all be then Nash County school system, the school board should align itself with the Nash County Board of Commissioners and have 7 districts. But at minimum, if you want to step it down from 11 to 9, because you're going to have a vast exit of territory area that some of your school board members currently serve that won't be with us anymore. And of course, the statute requires for us to balance the school districts, and you're going to lose quite a bit of that, so you're going to have to redistrict because you got to line yourself back up in accordance with the statute, which means each district has to be equal. and it won't be equal once you lose those students. So I just would ask you to look at, go ahead and start the process and doing your thinking and decide whether it's gonna be 9 and then 7, or whether it's gonna be from 11 to 7.
So
Certainly, the goal is, I would think, of any logical body is to align it like it should be, now that we can do it with the Board of Commissioners and use the same districts. Mr. Shaw?
Yeah, so I would bigger that, the difference with that, because basically what I read inside the legislation, I was trying to pull it up, that it doesn't dictate how many board members you got, it just says they need to be in Nash County. They need to reside in Nash County.
But the school district's got to be in Nash County, and
Right.
certainly it's not in Nash County.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
So what-
all your school board members residents of Nash County now?
Yes,
They
sir.
are.
Yes, sir.
That's what I thought.
So that's why I'm saying with that legislation piece, you need to go back.
So whether it's 11 or 15
Right,
or
absolutely.
7, whatever it is,
Yes.
they've already started that trigger. And in July the 1st, they'll pull it. That's when it'll start. So wouldn't we be wise to go ahead, forget that number, 11, I'm fine with 11.
I understand.
Wouldn't we be wise to go ahead and be moving forward and have our blocks in place so we're ready to do it when it's time to do it, rather than getting caught short?
I think that's a discussion that the Board of Education will have together as a team to formulate when we want to try to execute this process. Because basically, if you look at, and I'm not here to have that discussion at this meeting, because this meeting is a joint for us to share with you where we are. So this is a decision that the Board of Education Nash will be making in conjunction as a team, deciding how we're going to do this when it comes to the legislation and the law.
Well, there's one thing as I see it, and it's just me, is that to keep it from being such a burden, they're not smart, apparently not smart enough to see it, but it ought to be a phase out.
Well, it
Mr. Belleville, I'm
in
not sure what
essence
you
will
mean by
be.
that, but it has been
With
a
high
phase
school
out.
kids, it will be a phase out.
Well,
I mean,
So-
that's what I would
Yeah,
think.
so,
it would be.
so, Ms. Outlaw, I'm
If
sorry,
they-
Mr. Bedford, go ahead.
if they start, you just said the commissioner said they're gonna stop funding, what, at the end of this fiscal year, school year?
In June, yes, sir.
And so then, looking at the legislation, who's gonna take care of those students that reside on the Edgecombe County side of Rocky Mountain?
Edgecombe.
Now,
Edgecombe
that's
is
what I'm
preparing to
saying.
take those
That's
kids
why I'm
now.
That's why I'm saying that, y'all ought to be in a position to phase it out,
So
rather than just saying, all right, we're
Here's-
not funding now.
here's how it reads.
That's
As
your-
you'll see, the major deadline for the submission of transfer agreement described below will occur until the fall of 2023. And then after that, you got 120 days after local government commissioners certifies that the payment has not been made to the Edgecombe, by the Edgecombe County Commissioners. So once it does that, the certification has to be done. Is that not right, Mr. Outlaw?
Mr. Davis.
I'm Mr. Davis.
I'm sorry, Mr. Davis.
You can call me much worse things.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Wade.
It does say that, but the whole point, Chairman Shaw, is
Sure.
we know it's going.
You got me back on that one, so I got
No,
you.
I said that. But the whole point is we know it's coming.
Yeah.
Why do we want to push ourselves up on a tight timeline? We need to be working right now, getting this thing resolved. It's not gonna happen till 23, 24, but we know it's gonna happen based on that vote. And I don't think that vote's gonna change as hard as they worked on it, because I kind of watched them through the process. But, we just need to be ready for that. And if you want to take your district in Nash and divide it up into 11 school districts, your board certainly got the right to do that.
Yes, ma'am.
One thing that I think we have done is proactive to move in that direction, even as it being the first step, is to align our superintendents to have a conversation with that superintendent, because the key is, as political as this whole issue has been for as many years as this has been political, it's about students. And we have capable superintendents that can communicate on a different level to look at curriculum, buildings, the whole gambit, and put it together and bring back information that's going to be for the benefit of every student on both sides of this fence. So I think our first step has already been made, even though it's not officially a move, it's a good place to start until there are official movements happening on both sides. So that's just, I feel we are starting. It's not as visible as it needs to be, but it is starting.
And on the side of that too, Dr. Davis, is basically not only have our superintendents been working in conjunction, but also our lawyers on the page of this as well.
Mr. Chairman Davis, I would just going to throw one thing out that I noticed a few years ago that seemed to work really well between our relationship between commissioners and this board was when we had a team set up for the building process for Red Oak. Would that be a good time to bring up a team process for this as well?
So let me address that question.
I'd like to hear his opinion right quick, please.
I think he asked Mr. Davis.
Let me just share this, because basically, and the reason I'm saying this, young man, is that basically, if we want to do that, the Board of Education needs to sit down and work through that process. Well, I think it's great, well, we put together a team or whatever, but the board has to decide that. I appreciate all the efforts that's going on, and you're absolutely right. I hear what Mr. Outlaw said, we need to start working this process, and we have started working it.
The item that I request, Mr. Chairman, as you know, reads exactly, or I say I request, one of our commissioners asked this, therefore it's on the list of 15 things that we gave y'all to look at. And it actually says, Dean, when do we start a joint committee to prepare the school system changes that will be coming forward with Edgecombe County due to recent action? That was the item that we put on the agenda.
Yes, sir.
So to answer your question, I think that would be an excellent way to move forward with it.
Yes, sir.
At the time that the school board is ready to do that. And hopefully sooner than later.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Any other questions?
Are we at the end of your presentation?
Yes, sir.
A few things we asked.
Yeah, I've got those.
So
those were, we have a few more questions. I was trying to mark off what we have already discussed.
Long line of what we had here.
Okay. Did we, school bus drivers and solutions? I didn't hear that, but, Dr. Farrer, can you kind of give us the status of transportation and solutions?
I think the question that came from a commissioner was, we saw the negativity, and the question is there anything the board of commissioners could do to help in the process and let us know where you stand on that? I know you got a committee working on it.
So right now, we as a school district, from the start of this school year to where we currently are down about 20 bus drivers. And what we have done throughout the process is we have taken buses that did not have bus drivers, and we've condensed them by putting those kids on other buses, which have made those routes longer. We already were having routes that were running around an hour 15 minutes. Now we have some routes that are running up to an hour 45, almost 2 hours. I wish I could tell you that it has gotten better. It has not. One of the things that we have been in conversation about is trying to come up with maybe some incentive pay for drivers. Ms. Wallace was speaking earlier about the payments for our bus drivers. Last year, when we looked at the salaries of our bus drivers, and we looked at it between drivers who had 1 to 10 years of experience, 11 to 20 years of experience, and then 21 plus, what we saw that in the surrounding areas, our bus drivers made more per hour than the drivers in those surrounding areas. Those surrounding areas being Halifax, Roanoke Rapids, Wilson, Edgecombe. So when we look at those areas that's immediately around us, we are paying our drivers, or we're paying our drivers more than what the areas around us was paying. So then you go to the $15 per hour But, and help me with this, Mr. Hill, Dr. Ellis, I think that people who were already making $15 per hour were then given something around a 4% increase. Is that correct? So that still would put our drivers who were already making more than $15 an hour, still making more than what people around us are making. So to some degree, when we sit and we look at our situation, it's not just about pay for getting drivers. If you're looking at local companies who have trucking businesses, if you're looking at the local areas and their local transportation, they can't find drivers. And it's happening all over the country. It's not just here. So the only thing that we can try and do in this situation is that when we have people who want to drive, to try to get them through the class as quickly as possible, to try to get them licensed as quickly as possible, and to try to get them on the road as quickly as possible, and to try to be the very best we can be to the drivers that we have so they don't leave. There are some things that we have talked about, Dr. Ellis. I don't know if you want me to bring that up in terms of conversations that we've had with the board about some possible scenarios with some of our teacher assistants, clerical staff, child nutrition, maintenance, in terms of trying to use them as drivers for their specific schools, putting some clear lines and expectations in place so that they don't feel like they're being abused or made to do something. But what it boils down to, as my grandmother used to say, the X's and O's of this is, we can't fix this process without people. It is simply a people issue. We don't have drivers, we can't get kids to and from school on time. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So are you saying that you all are not going to force child nutrition workers to drive? Are you giving teacher assistants and the child nutrition workers the option? Because I did have one come to me, and she did not want to drive, and she felt like she was being pressured to.
So I'm not saying that we're not going to force, and I hate to use the word force because it wouldn't be force. If there was something that was put in place by the Board of Education, it was certainly then becomes that personal option on whether they did or not. But what we have said to our Board of Education is to consider using those individuals to drive for their particular schools, and again, putting clear expectations in place on how those individuals will be used. When you look at Wilson County, they have those individuals drive. Edgecombe, they have those individuals drive. Pitt County, they have those individuals to drive. And they still have problems finding drivers, but they're not having the issues that we're having. We still have kids in some instances who are not getting to school till 9 o'clock. And we have kids who are getting home at 6:30. We have buses still on the road at 7 o'clock coming from dropping kids off. It is an issue.
Well, and I understand the severity of it, but at the same time, if you're going to, and I know you don't like to use the word force, but insist that child nutrition workers or teacher assistants drive buses, suppose in turn you lose a teacher assistant, you lose new child nutrition workers, then you're almost back where you're starting from, and you have more positions to fill.
We're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yes, sir.
And that's the only way I know to put it. That I don't think that there's any great resolution at this point. But I'll go back to what I said a few seconds ago. It comes down to people. That's the issue. We don't have people.
Do you have it on your, are you recruiting? Do you have it on your website?
We have recruited out.
Well,
Superintendent's answer is if they were allowed to put it on the blimp, they would put it on the
I
blimp.
just believe there's some people out there that are willing to drive,
One thing.
especially if they feel like the children on the bus are gonna be well disciplined in order to ride. That they would take it. Thank you. That they would take it. I think some of them are holding back and don't want to do it because they think the children are gonna be rooting on that. On the bus. Yeah, I agree with that. If they don't know how to act on the bus, let the parent get them to school.
Let's remember, this is the school board meeting, and with everybody again.
Well, just offer
And I don't mean
just
to
offer
say
a
that.
suggestion.
I understand, sir, and I appreciate you.
We have a question down here, Mr.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to
Davis,
that,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Ayrton, in just 1 second. I saw your hand go up, but what I want to say to our board is, and I hope you'll take this well, but when I wanted to become involved in the process of being elected to some position, I looked very hard at the school board, I looked very hard at the county commissioners, and I talked to my father about it, because my father with an 8th grade education was a very smart man. And he simply looked at me, he said, what it boils down to is, do you want to mess with a man's kids, or you want to mess with his money? That's the choice you got. And if we were commissioners, we decided to mess with the man's money, and we decided not to mess with the man's kids. So let's keep in mind that we furnish money, the school board does pretty much everything else. Mr. Ayrton, I'll call on you for your question, sir.
Yeah, my question, I guess, with the salaried people, once they do 8 hours, then you have to either start paying, continue to pay them at their same rate, or you have to start paying them overtime. So you have to check with the labor board to make sure that what you're proposing, I don't know how the other systems are doing it, but that would be in line with labor standards.
So if they go over their 8 hours and they are hourly employees, they then go into overtime. And we would be required at that point to pay them overtime. And for us, again, I go back to, it's about we don't have people. And so if we have people in place and they go into an overtime situation, my own personal feelings is that we should be willing to pay the overtime, because what other choice do we have at this point?
Yeah, have no problem with that, you just have to follow the rules. That's it.
You heard it before, Dr. Farrer, but as long as we contacted the federal government about the ROTC program, it would be nice if we could contact the federal government, maybe reducing the age of a CDL license from 18 to 17, so we could train some of our high school kids. If every high school could find 5 students willing to drive a bus and go through the training and be responsible enough, that would be 25 bus drivers. We don't have any principals that are old enough to remember how it was when kids could drive buses at 16. At 16 this day and time is probably too young. But some of the best bus drivers, I used to be an AP in charge of buses at Southern. Some of our best bus drivers were high school kids. That might be something that, the federal government's gonna have to change that law, because now at 18, by the time a kid is trained, they're graduated and gone on. We can't use any young kids.
That's one of your key goals, is one of the board's key goals.
So Dr. Farrer, I thought you'd be able to give me some solutions, but I'm gonna mark that one off. But I do, thank you for giving us more pain, but I do know that we keep up with how many bus drivers are out every day. And I know probably last Thursday, well, a few weeks ago, me and Dr. Farrer were doing bus duty. We had about 30-some drivers out. And this is on the fly. So you've got to redirect buses, you got to push more on the road, you got to get drivers to drive, and it just gets to be a problem. So
I'll be glad to have a committee on that. All right, so, question number 4 says Inglewood and Hubbard Playground update. Mr. Davis, can you tell us something about playground equipment or? Might want to stay if I have another question too.
Real briefly, years ago, we had an account, a capital outlay account, probably 23, 24 years ago, that did have money in it. PTAs now raise money. You're looking, the Inglewood and Hubbard piece, I know the Inglewood piece that we removed, replacing that piece isn't 10, 15,000. It's 50, 60, 70,000 for one piece. We do maintain the sand levels, the border. If we need to replace a slider, we try to order it if we can get our hands on it. But with a $1.5 million capital budget and with the needs we're having and escalated cost with buildings and everything else to maintain them, unless I'm charged otherwise, it really hard to do the 1.5 million and do what we need to do from a facility standpoint, let alone trying to buy playground equipment. And that's just the bare facts.
Shannon, what you say is they're put in and purchased by the PTO?
Years ago, a lot of what you're seeing now that's in need of repair, a lot of this equipment is 20 plus years old. You know, when you go back 20 years, you try to find one who you bought it from, because 9 times out of 10 the sticker's gone. And then once you find what it is, trying to order a part, they may have to build it. I mean, you could be looking, even on a piece of playground equipment, 6 months to get a part, and then you're going to pay twice what you should pay because they don't have it anymore. So it's not really just a matter of that. It's a financial piece as well as, you know, the logistics of trying to get it. But to me, the financial piece is more an issue than anything with what we're given. Yes, ma'am.
I know the equipment is very expensive because I looked it up, 50 to 100,000. But my understanding is that Hubbard's equipment needs to be removed before someone gets hurt. And so, if the equipment is that bad, could you at least remove it from the property?
We have, in respect to the piece, from what I'm understanding, we have boarded off one section. If I'm not mistaken, it's a busted slide. Either the slide has been removed or it's been boarded off, and we are currently trying to find a replacement slide versus removing that entire piece. We do like to try to do that before we totally eradicate what is now a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 piece of equipment, because once you remove it, the PTA doesn't have the funds now to put it back. So if we can, you know, spend 3 or 4 or 5 on a slide, which this time of the year gets hectic to do, we do look into trying to repair before we eradicate.
Okay, but it is boarded, so that none of
Yes,
the
ma'am. I will confirm that tomorrow, but I do know we have had my folks out there to board it. Normally we get it where they cannot go through it and use it. Now, I'm not telling you weekend play doesn't happen. That's what happens to a lot of our equipment, the weekend play, and you know, it's tough to man that 24 hours.
Capital expenditures for the next 5 to 10 years, because I know we presented something about 2 years ago concerning those.
Are you basically asking about the CIP, what we're looking down the road, or?
That's correct. We just want to continue getting updates on that.
Sure.
Because we continue to update the counties, and we certainly need to fit y'all's needs into what we want to do at the county, so we'll know what our overall budget looks like. It's nothing specific, just continue talking to us about your short-term and long-term needs. No more, no less.
I will tell you, just off the cuff of my head, Esther's has really got us in really good shape from mechanical standpoint. We've hit the CIP probably on several of these through year 7 and 8. I think some of our biggest expenditures you'll see coming up are either new builds, renovations of older buildings where we've got new builds and left old portions of buildings. To me, those are some of the biggest expenditures that we need to be looking at long term.
Okay, so long-range plans for vocational classes and possible diploma. In your packet, you're going to see, mine's probably black and white, you're going to see every program that we offer in the high schools
presently. It's nice. Looks like this. Okay. Back section, you're going to see every program, and it just talks about the credentials, CTE assessments, and then the proof of the learning, which means they can get certified in certain areas. I just want to make sure I leave you with this. This is everything we offer, and I think presently we only have one vacancy. I think it's carpentry in one of these. This is a big list, and the other document I'm going to share with you is the focus we're putting now in elementary schools, middle school, high school, and post-secondary. We have a track now that we've starting in the elementary school. Kids are taking surveys as to interest, what they're interested in when it comes to work, future plans, and we position that up when they offer in the middle school and then it goes to the high school. So I just wanted to kind of leave that with you. Chad Thompson's not here. But we have something called Lunch and Learn that we started, gosh, I think it was this year, Ms. Nancy Smith, and we have one in December 1st. And we encourage you to attend because it really highlights our CTE programs, you know, for Nash County. So I really encourage you to attend some of those, and we can send you that date. But this is everything we offer presently in our high schools. Okay?
Thank you.
And I believe the last question, it says, if possible, a review of latest test scores. Now, I'd be here 2 hours doing the latest test scores. I will share a document that I went over when we did the board retreat. Some of the highlights, I will say, well, I won't call this a highlight, I'll call it a low light, but, you know, 2 years of COVID, we definitely fell behind some. And we were already a low-performing district. We are still presently a low-performing district. But what I will say is all K-2 schools last year exceeded growth. We surpassed the state average. We have 14 that met growth, 8 that exceeded growth. All 8 schools, math, reading, and science, we improved except 6th grade reading. All EOC data improvement in high school with English, biology, math, and graduation rates was the only thing that we missed our target on. So, in my opinion, we are growing and we're getting there. And in spite of COVID, we almost came out of low performing. I shared this with the board. I will send you the presentation so you can kind of look through it. And I encourage you, when we have those conversations, come and sit with us and we'll kind of explain some of this data and information for you. Okay? Thank you. I think that was my list.
Go ahead. Leave out one of the commissioner's questions.
Thank you. Let me just say I really appreciate your efforts, commissioners, for being supportive in the things that we do. Dr. Ellis and staff are doing a phenomenal job, and they continue to do extremely well with the resources. Again, I've highlighted a couple things that we talked about, that we're getting recognized across the state for leading training on various items. And we're really excited about that thing. One of the things that we would ask Mr. Bedfield and folks, if you know somebody that want to drive a bus, send them to us. We'll be more than happy to take names, right, Mr. Farrell, Dr. Farrell? More than happy to take names, send them out. So with that said, Mr. Outlaw, I appreciate the information regarding the JRTC program. Whatever you guys can do to help us out with that, that's great. We'll be reconvening with our board to talk further along this merger thing as far as the board, find out what's the pleasure of the board, how we plan on doing that, because it's a decision that 11-member board makes. So with that said, we don't have anything else, Dr. Ellis. We also do student advisory committee with students throughout the district. That Dr. Ellis, if you can talk to that real briefly. I went to a few of those. I thought they were very encouraging. I would encourage you guys, if you want to participate, be a part of that, to just sit in and listen to that. We would give you an open invitation to do that. Because the more you know, the more highlight, the more information, the more in-depth you are to talk about certain things.
So we started last year with teacher advisory council, student advisory council, parent advisory council, and administrator advisory council. And we just come up with topics that they want to talk about, promotion standards, retention, bus drivers. And we sit back and have dialogue with them. And Mr. Sharp is exactly right. You will learn more at the Student Advisory Council
That's right.
when you just ask. It's been real good because we're getting out there and boots on the ground. We're starting to learn some things, and we made a lot of policy changes based on some of these advisory councils. So encourage you, if you ever want it, I can send invites, and all you have to do is zoom in and go from there.
Do the Student Advisory Council and the adult, you have an adult council, do they get together and exchange ideas?
That's basically what we do, exchange ideas.
So, with that said, you want to adjourn? Any other?
What I have to do is actually adjourn our meeting because we won't be meeting again this month, but I'd just like to say one thing about one of the questions, and that was the test scores, and we had heard rumors that they were certainly looking significantly better. We hadn't had any official notification of that. We kind of would like to get that, what you're sending to us, so that it affects the commissioner's job in so many ways as well, particularly as it relates to industrial recruitment. We do get asked questions from time to time because when we get a strike selection person here, they have already done their homework on our area. But if we had that data we could share with them, it would be great to be able to do that and show we are in a positive direction. So if you could just keep us informed on what they are, but anything that school boards got going on is positive. If you were not just twice a year, share it with us, but share it whenever it's available, we can help use that and do some of the other things that we do. But with that said, Mr. Chairman, if you're ready, I will ask.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
I just had one request of the school board, and that has to do with the agenda. If there's any way possible, you all could get the agenda to us at least the Friday before to receive the agenda on the day of the meeting that morning. I really would like a concerted effort to get it to us before the day of the meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, anything else from board commissioners? If not, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Outlaw, seconded by Commissioner Wilkins, or which one? Okay. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? We stand adjourned. Thank you.
I'd like to call for a motion for adjournment for the Nash County Board of Education. I need a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
It's been properly moved by Dr. Chavis, seconded by Mr. Jenkins. Questions or discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes carried. Meeting's adjourned.